So how does the world scenario look like before 1850s? And answer is very simple, that before 1850s, before we started industrializing, before we started using coal, oil and gas, it was 100% renewable energy. And whatever we were consuming, whatever we were utilizing, were coming from the all natural renewable resources. Today, we know that there is a problem in the world. We know that people are talking about renewable energy solutions and and how should we transit from current situation to renewable energy scenario. And therefore, the next question is, what should the world composition of energy look like by 2030, 2040, 2050? Sooner we do, better it is. And there cannot be any doubt that the scenario has to be 100% renewable energy again. Because as I said, our dependency on the fossil fuel has more than one problem. Availability of the fuel, climate change that it causes, dependency, foreign exchange, all kind of problems are there. So it has to be 100% renewable energy again by 2030, 2040, 2050. We can delay it, but we cannot deny it, that it has to be like this. And if you say in 2030, then it is only 9 years left from now, 2040, only 19 years, and 2050, only 30 years left. So when the entire world has to move to the new system, new arrangement of renewable energy, I think it's a good question to rethink about energy solutions and the mechanism that we follow to fulfill our energy needs. How do we travel this energy distance? How are we going to go there? Are we going to go in steps? Are we going to go systematically? Are we going to change it drastically? What every government is going to do in the world? These are all big questions. And all the student must really be concerned about this particular question. How do we go there? Well, I mean, so one good thing is that we can keep our faith on renewable energy solutions. I did my PhD in solar photovoltaic technology. Professor Anish worked in solar thermal technology. There are many people who are working in various renewable energy technology. What I can tell you that we can actually put our faith in renewable energy technology, because in last 30, 40, 50 years span, it has actually showed tremendous progress. So there are many materials that can be used for solar PV technology. There are silicon technologies which has made amazing progress, and we can actually get efficiency of the panels around 24, 25% in the best case scenario, where the ideal efficiencies are about 30%. So we are operating so close to the ideal efficiency. And same thing is also true with the other renewable energy technologies. The wind energy technology, for example, has been growing and growing and growing. The cost of electricity that we can derive from solar PV technology, the cost of electricity that we can derive from wind energy technology, the cost of electricity that we can derive with the large scale solar thermal are very competitive with the fossil energy based solutions like coal based solutions. So therefore, yes, it is very clear that we can put a faith on renewable energy technology. Yes, it is very clear that we need to convert 100% on renewable energy sooner than later. But the question is, in what way? What is the possible pathway that we should follow? There can be tens and hundreds of possibilities of doing that. And if your path is not going to be the right, and I'm going to show you with the data that we are, even with the renewable energy technology consumption, we may end up in the trouble in the future. And therefore the right path is very important. And that's why I titled my talk as a new perspective for the energy scenario. But I'm going to get you there with little bit of philosophy, and it is so important that we should do that. First, let us take a snapshot of we, the modern human of 21st century. We, the modern human of 21st century, are the most evolved species ever existed on this planet. Nobody was as advanced as we are. We are scientifically advanced. We are technologically advanced. We are economically advanced, isn't it? So we are way ahead than any other species that existed. But whenever such a situation exists, I want to quote Plato. He's a Greek philosopher, and he, in his book, The Republic, he has made this statement. He said, kings should become philosophers or that philosophers should become kings. And today, the modern human are the kings of the planet, isn't it? We control everything. We are so advanced. So we have to be philosopher. And if it is not, we are going to behave like a headless chicken. That in my view looks like that we are actually behaving like that. So let us think philosophically, and a very simple question that I keep asking people, that yes, one side our GDP is growing and every country's GDP is growing. All over the world GDP is growing. What is the main purpose of growing our GDP? Why do we want to do that? And in Indian scriptures, it is very clear that it is written very clearly that behind every single act that we human do, there is only one purpose, is to be happy, derive happiness. So with GDP is growing, with the growth of GDP, India's GDP has been growing with the 5%, 6%, 7%, 8%, 9%. Is it resulting in a growth in the smile as well? And answer is no. The smiles are going down, isn't it? There's more depression, there's more tension. Many things, depression was never heard when we were children. But today there is a term called depression. People actually, there are doctors who are treating the patient who are in depression. There's a more violence in the society. There is a bigger suicide rate. There is higher divorce rates. So what I'm saying is, though GDP is growing, smiles are decreasing. I believe there is something wrong in the world. It is not going in the way we would like to grow it. I also keep asking people, what is the most important thing in your life? What is the most important thing in your life? People say parents, job, earning money, house, children, wife, whatnot. But then I have to comment that if I say that, let me close your nose by 1 minute, 2 minutes, will you be able to survive? No. So the moment you close your nose for a minute, you will realize that the most important thing in your life is air. And if air is so important, are we really taking care of it? Is it becoming better? No, air is becoming more polluted every single passing year. The air quality index, with all our modernity, we have defined air quality index. We have defined air quality index, isn't it? Isn't it a bad development, I would say? Why do we need to define air quality index? So GDP is growing, but the nature is decreasing. Not only the air, the water, river, forest, soil, everything is degrading. So what is the point? We cannot live without nature. We cannot live without air. We cannot live without water. We cannot live without forest. So what is the point in increasing GDP if our nature is degrading? And nature is degrading means our life is degrading. What is the point in doing it? So I think that's a very important fundamental question. Young generation must think themselves. They must ask their parents why it is like this. So if GDP is growing and nature is degrading, I think there is something wrong in the world. Sooner we realize, better it will be. All elements of nature is degrading, and whether it is water, soil, air, forest, and quickly I'm going to show you some numbers. There is a 4.5 million premature death every single year due to the poor air quality. And this map here in the purple color shows where are these areas. Look at the most of the South Asia is part of it. 4.5 million deaths. Corona is nothing in front of it. Loss of forest is about 33%. Whatever forest used to be there on this planet, 33% disappeared. And forest is considered lungs of the planet. Then we worry about the oxygen and oxygen supply. Water is such an important element of our life. We cannot live without drinking water for more than 3-4 days. 2/3 of the global population live under severe water scarcity for at least 1 month in a year. Can you believe it? 500 million people face severe water scarcity every day around the year. That is what we are. That is what the modern humans of today. That is what the advanced humans are today in today's situation. In fact, I just want to quote one more thing. I live in a bus, and because of this lockdown, bus is not moving. And there is a small place near the driver's side where the driver can sit, climb up to his seat. So there's a small hole. The sparrow made a house, the nest for laying eggs in just one day. I have asked this question to people: how much time it takes for human beings to make our house? Sometimes people pay EMIs for 20 years, 15 years, 30 years. Is the science and technology helping us or making our life difficult? And with all the numbers that I have been showing, the only conclusion that I personally draw is whatever direction in science and technology that we have grown, or the whatever manner that we have used, it has not gone in the right direction. Soil has been degraded by 30%. So what I'm saying, all natural elements are degrading. And one of the major reasons for this degradation is the use of energy. Use of energy. Energy, the whole world is play of energy. Why are we able to do so many things? Why we are able to destroy our own climate? Because we have ability to use energy. We have ability to extract energy in the form of coal, petrol, diesel. And therefore we are consuming more and more. And many times it is right, because our sustainable development, our development and growth of our economy, development and growth of our health, education, gender, everything depends on use of energy. And this is the chart which shows how 17 sustainable development goals are related to energy. 17 sustainable development goals. Energy in the center of it. So we need more and more energy. But goal number 13, which is about the climate change. If you want to limit the climate change, if you want to mitigate the climate change, we should be reducing our energy consumption. So one side we want increasing energy consumption. For climate change mitigation, you want decreasing energy consumption. And these are the opposite problems, this is the contradiction. How do we solve it? And I believe that anybody who solves this problem will not get only one Nobel Prizes, but should get bunch of Nobel Prizes. This is such a big problem. It is in fact becoming the problem and a threat to the existence of human being on this planet. Existence of human being on this planet. So it's a huge, huge problem that we have. And as I told you earlier, that over the last 100 years, particularly last 50, 60 years, we have been growing our consumption of coal, oil, and gas. These are the carbon sources. And every time you burn carbon, it results in a carbon dioxide. As a result of that, the carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere has also been growing. So what is the problem? Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, and therefore it is resulting in a greenhouse effect, which is causing global warming. Look at this. What has happened in last 30, 40 years? This is the graph for last 1,000 years almost. And the carbon dioxide concentration was almost constant throughout the period, but especially in last 30, 40 years, look how fast it is growing. And today the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that is sitting is about 40 to 47% extra than what used to be, 47% extra. And that extra carbon dioxide is resulting in an extra heating of the planet. Our planet is already warmer by 1 degree centigrade. And many people may feel, what is the big deal about 1 degree centigrade? Just 1 degree centigrade? In summer, temperature goes 45, 46 degrees centigrade. In winter, temperature goes down to 4, 5 degrees centigrade. Some countries go to sub-zero degrees centigrade. What is the big deal about 1 degree centigrade? But 1 degree centigrade average increase in the temperature of the entire planet. Entire planet. Imagine how big the problem is. And it is a problem because it is resulting in a very erratic events and activities in the world. Forest fires in Australia, in Amazon, in America, enormous magnitude. Millions of hectares of forest is burning. Why? Because there's a warmer and drier air now in many parts of the places. Opposite is also happening. Wherever there is dry area and the desert area, snowfall is being experienced. This is the image of Saudi Arabia and just a couple of months back. Snowfall in Saudi Arabia and desert area. In my own district, there was an enormous hailstorm, and it was almost looking like a Kashmir in Madhya Pradesh. This, of course, we all know very well that how glaciers are melting and melting and melting. They are melting so much that the enormous sea is the sea level itself is increasing. Look at how big is the sea, but the level of sea is increasing. Imagine how much ice is melting, almost 3.5 million square kilometer of ice has been melted, and it is in the sea now, and it has increased the water level. All this area, which are the cold continents, like this is an example of Europe. There are heat waves in the cold continent, and the temperature in Europe last year has gone about 45 degrees centigrade. One of the city in Paris, France, measured the temperature of 45.8 degrees centigrade. So the whole balance of our ecosystem is not there anymore. It's imbalanced, and therefore all kind of erratic things are taking place. And this is the picture of Delhi. And in the winter, the air quality is so poor that it is very difficult to breathe, and people are now buying air purifier. I mean, isn't it so funny and irony of the modern world that we have to buy air purifier to purify the air that we can breathe? Come on. I mean, like fish is in the water, the human beings are in the air. Air is an element we have to continuously live in. How long we are going to purify it? Anyway, the problem is much bigger than what we think. The problem is that the climate scientists have been telling us that we need to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade, if not 2 degrees centigrade. And this is very clearly stated in this report that is shown here. We need to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade. Why? Because beyond 1.5 degrees centigrade, there will be irreversible changes that will start in our climate. So the climate, some elements of climate will start to become irreversible. And by the time it reaches 2 degrees centigrade, almost the entire climate will be irreversible, which means that you will never be able to correct it back. So imagine what is the danger that we have. So the next big question is how much time we have. And the younger generation should really ask this question: how much time do I have to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade or 2 degrees centigrade? By the way, every single second, we are emitting 1,300 tons of carbon dioxide every single second. And by the time I finish speaking a sentence, it almost results in 10,000 tons of carbon dioxide emission, 10,000. Per year emission is very huge, about 42 billion tons. And as per the remaining carbon budget, how much more carbon we can emit? In 2017, this was about 420 gigatons. In 2020-21, we have only about 300 gigatons that we can further emit before we touch 1.5 degrees centigrade global warming. How much time is left? Well, divide 300 gigatons by 42 gigatons, that is per year emission, and you will get the answer that it is less than 7 years. Look at this image. This is a climate clock, and you people can Google search and figure out climate clock. If you want to limit the global temperature at 1.5 degrees centigrade, within 6 years and 298 days, by the way, this image I have taken about, I think, more than 2 months back, and today we need only about we have only about 6 years and 220 days or so. In 6 years and 220 days, we should switch 100% to solar energy, 100%. So right now we are at 28%. Within 6 years and 220 days, can we shift to 100% solar energy? Looks almost impossible to even think. Then similar number is there for 2 degrees centigrade, and we have about 20 years and 22 years. So therefore, 2030, 2040, 2050, sometime sooner than later, we have to switch 100% to solar energy. IPCC report clearly mentioned that the switch has to be drastic and immediate. Our switch transition to energy has to be drastic and immediate. If it is not drastic change, we will only be feeling good about it. If it is not immediate, it is already far too late. So whatever programs that governments are building, whatever programs that you are going to work, make sure that your program follows these two important, or your program qualifies these two important terms, drastic and immediate. Without that, it is not going to be sufficient. And therefore, in my view, the drastic and immediate solution is switch 100% to solar energy. Surrender electricity connection. As I told you, the solar has already become very advanced. It has become cost effective. And therefore, we can switch 100% to solar energy. We need to switch. And I believe that when I went to various countries, about 30 countries during 2018-19, I realized that whatever efforts the governments are making all over the world, it is not going to sufficient for mitigating climate change. And therefore, we should do something. We as an individual should do something. And what I have done is I have taken a leave from IIT Bombay. I started this Energy Swaraj Yatra. I live in this bus and I have taken a place that for 11 years, I'm going to go around in the country and try to bring this message and switch to solar energy as soon as possible. So this white curtain that you see, I'm sitting in this white curtain just right now while I'm talking to you. So that is where the new perspective comes in. And the new perspective, we need to, first of all, understand what are the fundamental laws that governs our sustainability and our existence on this planet. And this is based on what is called Gandhian philosophy. Gandhiji said that there's only enough in the world for everyone's need, not for the greed. And therefore, I translated this into a law that in an ecosystem of finite resources, there can only be finite consumption. And Earth is a planet with a finite resources. Earth size is finite. The amount of water on the planet is finite. The river is finite. The forest is finite. Minerals are finite. Everything is finite. Therefore, our consumption and production also should be finite, isn't it? But what is happening in reality? In reality, we want to increase our production. In reality, we want to increase our consumption. But the planet size is finite. Therefore, this equation cannot hold true for a long, long time to come. This equation is going to falter, and therefore we as the entire humanity are going to falter sometime. So let us realize this. Second law. So we cannot violate the first law. In an ecosystem of finite resources, there has to be finite consumption. Second law I stated as, in an ecosystem of finite resources, there can only be distributed production. There can only be distributed production. Why? Because when we do centralized production, it results in unequal distribution. Big factories, big mall, big this, everything, only few people will get the most of the benefit. As a result of that, there is an inequity that increases in the world. And when inequity increases in the world, there will be lack of peace, there will be more violence, and we are not going to achieve our aim. And therefore, Gandhiji said, no, not the mass production. We need production by masses. Our production should be by masses. And therefore, when we do this, then we can actually be an equal and equitable society. So therefore, two laws we must follow. If you want thinking about energy solution, we must follow this two law. Number one law, limit your consumption. We should have limited consumption. Second thing is localize your production. And when we apply this law to energy, it becomes energy Swaraj. So limit your consumption. I will come to that. Whatever energy you are consuming, limit it first, because nothing is infinite in this world. Whatever your limited consumption is, make sure that you locally produce it. When we follow this two law, then and then only human life on this planet can sustain for long, long, long time. Otherwise, as I said earlier, the existence of human life itself is becoming a big question mark. So therefore, I call this idea as energy Swaraj, energy by locals for locals. When local people generate and local people consume their own energy using local resources, then we call it energy Swaraj. And the energy Swaraj is a concept that is required not in one country, not in one continent, but on entire planet. Everybody needs to be self-sufficient in energy, because energy has other dimensions and other problem dimension as well. And last year, when we got this award of $100,000 from IEEE, and we have donated this money and we have created this foundation called Energy Swaraj Foundation. It's a not-for-profit organization, and with the function of or purpose of this organization to promote energy Swaraj across the world. So approach has to be, a perspective has to be, let us limit our consumption and let us localize our production, and therefore switch to 100% on solar energy sooner than you can think. Even this, to guide people, I have created a 3-step approach. How do we do it? I've also written in this my book, which is titled as Energy Swaraj. So there is a 3-step approach. Step number 1, what you should is avoid the use of energy as much as possible, even if it is solar energy. Listen carefully. Avoid the use of solar energy also. Very important to understand this. Why we should avoid the use of solar energy also, or renewable energy also? Because there is no free lunch in the world. Anything that you are going to manufacture, there is always going to have some side effect. That side effect can be small or big. In case of coal electricity, side effect is big. In case of solar electricity, wind electricity, side effect is going to be small, but not zero. Therefore, there's going to be finite impact even from solar energy. What is the best thing you and I can do? Avoid use of energy as much as possible, even if it is solar energy. And believe me, if you really understand the seriousness of the climate change, many things you will automatically avoid. In my home, for example, at IIT Bombay, I do not use refrigerator. We do not use geyser. We do not use air conditioner. We do not use microwave. This can be avoided. We used to live like that. Everybody all over the world, 30 years back, 40 years back, people used to live without that. Can we live in this era? We can live without that. Yes, we can live it. So whatever is avoidable, please do avoid. 1/3 of it. Step number 2, minimize the use of energy as much as possible using efficient appliances. So whatever energy is required, we should use it. After avoiding, we should use it, but we should minimize it by using efficient appliances, like use of light emitting diode, half of the energy reduction you can make. Use of BLDC fan rather than the normal ceiling fan, again more than 50%, 60% energy cut down. Use of 5-star rated small appliances. People use refrigerator. I have seen in the Western country 3 doors and 4 doors, and people are trying to make a room in the refrigerator, isn't it? No, don't use small if you at all you want to use it, and that small has to be 5-star rated, very efficient, so that you can fulfill your energy needs with a little. You can actually use air conditioner also with the efficient appliance. So therefore 1/3 of energy you should minimize. So 1/3 you should avoid, another 1/3 you should minimize, and how much is remaining? 1/3. Then the remaining 1/3 should be generated. So avoid, minimize, and generate is the formula. So generate using renewable energy, generate using solar energy. So 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 is the formula you should follow. I call it AMG rule: avoid, minimize, generate. And if you do not follow AMG rule, you have to say OMG. Oh my God, solar is expensive. Oh my God, renewable energy is expensive. Oh my God, efficiencies are not high. Oh my God, rooftop space is not here, there. All kind of excuses will come. So follow AMG if you want to avoid saying OMG. As I told earlier, I believe that the time available for us to make climate corrections are very short. And all over the world, whatever efforts governments are doing, it is never going to be sufficient. And therefore, because each one of us use energy, each one of us contribute to the climate change, each one of us must take an action. And when everybody in the world starts to take an action, it becomes a public movement. So I believe that we have to create a public movement. We have to go beyond policies. We have to go beyond economics, and then create a solution. Then create a public movement, and then we can actually make a solution. And I believe that this public movement can definitely start from academic institutions. Can our academic institutions, schools, colleges, university be completely off the grid? Can we be independent? Can we generate and fulfill our 100% energy requirement on our own? And because students, the future of this planet, the future, the young generation spend a lot of time in academic institution. If they start behaving and adopting to solar energy, I think it will definitely spread very fast and a movement will come. And in Madhya Pradesh, in state where I come from, with the government, we are actually started this program where we are trying to convert academic campuses 100% towards solar energy, 100%. And there are 7 campuses which will come. I mean, this COVID has affected the plan a little bit, but I'm sure The campuses will go 100% on solar energy soon. Also, we have launched a global program. We call it A Million Pledges for Billion Hopes. We want millions of people to take a pledge to reduce their energy consumption. And one of the most quantifiable means is electricity consumption, because we can monitor by monitoring the electricity consumption at home. What you should do is take a pledge of reducing electricity consumption and fulfill it. And if you take a pledge of reducing your electricity consumption by whatever percent, 5%, 10%, 20%, I think it will result in thousands of kilograms of CO2 emissions over a period of time. And therefore we call it million pledges for billion hopes. And every kilogram of carbon dioxide saved is a hope for the future. Because once a carbon dioxide is emitted, it remains in the atmosphere for 300 years, 400 years, and our future generations are going to suffer the consequences. So take a pledge and do this. So there is a program that we have created. We call it Energy and Climate Keep Up Program. Keep Up. UPP is understand, pledge, and progress. And all of you who are watching this talk are invited to become part of this program. So there is a training program that I have created. You can go to this link, energyswaraj.org/keep up. There is a training program that I have created. There are 13 videos. You can watch those 13 videos, become the certified volunteer of the program. And we have also created an app. And through the app, you can actually start registering the pledges. And not only register the pledges, monitor the pledges. If person is taking pledge to reduce 10% electricity bill, whether 10% electricity bill reduction has happened or not happened, even that monitoring can happen. So together we can literally save millions and millions of kilograms of carbon dioxide emission. Young generation must take part in it, because it is the question of your own future. And at the end, I must say thanks to all of you. And I must summarize in one last thought, that if we do not do all this thing, it is said that by the end of this century, by 2100, the global temperature will rise to about 3 to 6 degrees centigrade. And when the global temperature will rise to 3 to 6 degrees centigrade above the normal temperature, whether the human life will survive or not survive, how many survive, in what shape will survive, is not clear. And therefore we say that once upon a time, there were dinosaurs on this planet. It is not there anymore. And if you continue to behave in the same manner, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years later, a new species will appear on this planet, and they will say, once upon a time, there were humans on this planet. I hope we don't want to hear that. And therefore, I hope we all will take corrective actions. And with this note, thank you very much for inviting me here to share these ideas. And I'll be very happy to discuss with all of you and answer your question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Now we'll move on to the Q&A session. So the first question is, sir, should the younger generation focus more on creating behavioral change among people, or should we focus on using technology to make economically viable solution to battle climate change?
Well, these two things are not different. I mean, the whole problem of the world is a lack of balance. We run behind technology, we forget the spirituality, then we go behind one direction, forget the other direction. The whole problem is the lack of balance. The wise person is the person who can make a balance between money, peace, creativity, joy, fun. Everything has to be in balance. So promoting the technology and bringing awareness, both are part of the same game. And it is not I should do this or this. You should do everything.